Prosim predstavnico fakultete, profesor dr. Majo Klun, ki je obenem tudi prorektorica za prenos znanja, digitalizacijo in trajnostni razvoj na Univerzi v Ljubljani, za pozdravni nagovor.
Lep pozdrav vsem skupaj, pozdravljeni na fakulteti za upravo. Seveda vas pozdravljam tudi v imenu Univerze v Ljubljani, ki je soorganizatorka tega največjega festivala, namenjenega inovacijam. Kaj ne rečem, najprej bi se rada zahvalila organizatorjem, vsem tem pridnim nevidnim osebam iz rektorata, predvsem iz Pisarne za prenos znanja in pa tistih, ki delajo tukaj na fakulteti za upravo, vse te nevidne stvari, da stvari funkcionirajo. Najprej hvala tem. Potem pa lep pozdrav tudi naši osrednji gosti, Jessica Meijer from Univerza Leiden. Hello and welcome here. In potem nadaljujemo v slovenščini lahko. Da povem, kaj hočemo v bistvu povedati v okviru tega pozdravnega nagovora, če mu lahko tako rečem. Predvsem je glavni namen, da vam predstavim glavne stvari, ki jih pač delamo na Univerzi v Ljubljani za spodbujanje večjega družbenega učinka naših raziskav, pa tudi ne nazadnje, današnji dan je posvečen tako imenovanim hud inovacijam. Imenovali smo jih hud, kaj pomeni HUD, no, da niso hude, ampak so hude seveda tudi, a ne. Kakorkoli gre za humanistiko, umetnost in družboslovje. To je tisto, kjer včasih mislimo, da inovacij ni, pa vendar so družbene inovacije, ki so mogoče manj opazne, manj opevane, manj, kako bi rekla, prepoznane v družbi, kar je škoda, imajo pa ves čas zelo velik vpliv na družbo kot tako. Zdaj, če bi pogledali strogo definicijo družbene inovacije, bi rekla, da je to vse, kar spreminja družbeno prakso v smeri pozitivnega izreševanja izzivov, ki jih ima družba. Recimo, tako v literaturi boste našli, da so taki primeri, recimo fair trade ali pa socialno podjetništvo, kot neki taki primeri družbenih inovacij, s katerimi se v bistvu vi vsakodnevno srečujete, pa niste mogoče nikoli pomislili, da gre za inovacije. Seveda pa je družbeni učinek nekaj drugega, precej širšega, namreč ne samo družbene inovacije, ampak tudi inovacije v naravoslovju, v tehniki povzročajo družbene učinke. Včasih raziskovalci velikokrat strogo razmišljamo samo o neki konkretni raziskavi in manj o njeni aplikabilnosti, vendar na koncu, vsakič, ko se srečate potem s kakršnimi koli razpisi, predvsem pa poročili, takrat pa morate znati opisati tudi družbeni učinek. In to precej natančno, precej eksplicitno. Lahko povem, da ker sem slučajno v delovni skupini na Arisu, za obrazce vam povem, da bo ta del še posebej sedaj večji, obsežnejši. Se pravi, ne bo dovolj, da bomo samo izbrali neko že iz liste nabora družbenih učinkov, ampak bo treba znati to tudi opisati, enostavno razložiti, na kaj vse ste vplivali, kaj se je spremenilo zaradi vaše raziskave, tako da se pripravite tudi v tej smeri pri svojem raziskovanju, da razmišljate o učinku, ki ga morate doseči s svojo raziskavo. Seveda temeljne raziskave v osnovi naj ne bi bile takoj aplikabilne, ampak vsakič, ko nekaj raziskujemo, je prav, da razmišljamo tudi, kako bomo pozitivno dali nek doprinos družbi, v kateri živimo. Vem, da je to včasih težko, ampak kljub temu. Kot veste, smo letos na Univerzi v Ljubljani posebej odprli nov sklad, ki ga imenujemo še enkrat hud sklad. Namreč poleg tako imenovanega inovacijskega sklada, ki smo ga do sedaj imeli predvsem za financiranje tehnoloških inovacij, smo vzporedno odprli letos tudi hud sklad, ki posebej podpira družboslovne, umetnostne oziroma humanistične, če sem prav zdaj po to spregala, sklanjala kakorkoli inovacije. Namreč letos smo tudi prvič opravili ta razpis, nekaj predstavnikov, imetnikov tega sklada je tudi tukaj. Vendar, ker mogoče družbene inovacije niso tako, bi rekli, popularne, smo razširili ta razpis tudi na sam družbeni učinek. Se pravi, tudi tisto, kar bo dalo nek pozitiven družbeni učinek, je bilo prav tako vzeto v obzir, se pravi, je upravičen strošek tega hud sklada. Seveda bo to zdaj stalnica na Univerzi v Ljubljani, kar pomeni, da bodo razpisi vsako leto. Poleg tega, da ni to samo pridobivanje nekih, rečemo, minimalnih sredstev, ki jih imate lahko za povečanje družbenega učinka svoje inovacije, v okviru tega financiranja raziskovalci, ki so izbrani, dobijo tudi drugo podporo, se pravi delavnice, okrogle mize, izobraževanja, kako povečati svoje družbene učinke. Se pravi, ne gre strogo samo za neko financiranje ozke raziskave, na kateri delate, ampak tudi pridobivanje širših znanj. Poleg tega že nekaj let v okviru Unimajnca, kot je bilo že rečeno na začetku, ponujamo tudi, oziroma ne ponujamo, podeljujemo nagrade, rektorjeve nagrade za inovacije in ena od teh, mislim, da je zdaj drugo ali tretje leto, celo tretje leto bo zdaj podeljena tudi nagrada za inovacijo na področju družboslovja, humanistike oziroma umetnosti. Tako da že ves čas prepoznavamo tudi to področje raziskovanja kot pomembno in ga tudi podpiramo na različne načine. Dobitniki so zanimivi, vsako leto, lahko si za nazaj pogledate vse podelitve, mislim, da so dostopne na YouTubeu in boste videli, da gre za res zanimive zgodbe in jaz se letošnjih že spet veselim, ker ta festival je na zaključku meni osebno najboljši. Kaj naj rečem? Lepo se majte, veliko se danes naučite, veliko spoznanj vzemite s seboj in pri svojih raziskavah resnično razmišljajte o tem, kako lahko koristite družbi, v kateri živite. In seveda lep teden, ne samo dan na Unimajncih.
I will switch to English now because we will talk in English, but we were discussing, funnily enough, this morning, what to do to make this roundtable memorable. Jessica suggested I can start crying, or maybe I can throw some water into you. But I guess this funny thing with the microphones and the speakers is enough to make this memorable. Jessica, welcome to Ljubljana, welcome to the University of Ljubljana. Let me start this debate as a skeptic. Whenever I'm applying for a research project and I invest all my energy and knowledge into the research itself, always there is at the end of the application, that section, what will be the economic and social impact of your research? And I'm always, and I guess I'm not the only one struggling with that part. And I'm sometimes joking that if I use a critical discourse analysis, I would find quite a lot of science fiction in that part. So making up something about the research. Then I also have colleagues back at the Faculty of Arts who are quite critical towards the social impact thing. They say this is a new neoliberal bullshit, sorry to use this term. And if I'm not mistaken, you have once worked in an institution or university where most of your colleagues believe that you want to sell them out. So my question is, how do you deal with those who are skeptic? How do you approach this skepticism? And what is your reply to those who say, do we really need to do it? Isn't research itself enough? Do we really need to think about the impact and the applicability of the research? We are interested in pure science and not the applicability of it.
Do I have to turn it on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
More. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, it's green, but I don't...
It works now.
Ah, it works. And I don't think there are mysterious voices in the room anymore. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've never been to Ljubljana. It's beautiful. And you're very lucky to be in such a university. There's a lot in that question. So, just to make it fun, let's start with the neoliberal bullshit. I like starting with bullshit in the morning. Actually, I like ending with bullshit as well. So, I won't tell your boss, I don't know your name, but who would agree with the neoliberal bullshit? Just put your hand up. Good, I'm glad there's some. Come on, there's got to be more. There's only one or two, and I actually know you, so that doesn't even count. All right. Well, I'll do it for myself then. I think it's neoliberal bullshit. So let's back that up a little bit. When I think about neoliberal bullshit, I think about selling out to capitalism. Yeah? We live in a capitalist economy. It's all about money. Whatever you do doesn't really count unless you earn millions, and then you're successful. That's kind of the framework I'm thinking about. There's a lot of different ways to think about that in my job in the university. I think the most important for me is, well, wait a minute, what are we valuing? It's about value. So do I value money? Do I value a capitalist society? Yes, I live in a capitalist society, but how can I maneuver in that society in a way that resonates with me? Or, to my researcher, what is it you're trying to do? And how do you do that in a way that rests with you and your own integrity? So, if you want to make a lot of money, okay, I'm great, make a lot of money. If you say, yeah, that's not actually what I'm trying to do, maybe I'm trying to create value or create a positive difference in a different way, I'd say, fantastic, great, how are you going to do that? So I think you have to first go back to what is it you're trying to do? Yes, I have been actually more than once in faculties and universities that essentially hate me. Which, I mean, a lot of people hate me for lots of good reasons, I imagine. But in a professional level, why? Well, generally because I think they don't understand what I'm trying to do. And I don't understand what they're trying to do. And so the first step is first you have to get in the door. So if they never talk to me, then we get stuck, right? I don't know what they're doing, they don't know what I'm doing, and we hate each other. If the door is open a little bit and you are encouraged or invited, even just by one person, to have a discussion or to have a brainstorm or to face criticism, then it becomes very interesting. And actually, I like being hated. Why? Because then something happens. If everybody thinks everything that I do is marvelous, and then I'm the most wonderful, brilliant person ever, which of course I am, nothing happens because they just wait and it's all happy and it's all good. But if there's a little bit of tension or a little bit of friction, then it becomes very interesting. And then it becomes more of a discussion about maybe what I'm doing doesn't fit with what they need. Or maybe I haven't thought about it in a different way or in a different perspective, and maybe I should. And then, as long as you're respectful of each other, you can actually do something very interesting together. Does that help?
Well, let me knock on that door.
Sure.
Let me come to your office now. Let me be still a little bit skeptical, and let me say that, okay, I work with human rights, citizenship issues. I want this world to be a better place. That's the impact I'm looking for. But we jumped directly into the water. In my first question, I was using both terms, social impact, applicability, selling out. So what is the social impact? How do you explain it to somebody who comes to your office and say, I'm struggling with this research, I need to put something into the application. The rector just explained that this is going to be even more important in the research coming. So how do you start? What is the social impact? Is it the same as applicability?
Okay, so first thing is, you don't come to me, I come to you. And I do that on purpose because I need to learn from you. And there's a power differential, right? If I come to you versus you come to me.
But you might have a bigger office than I.
I do, I have a lovely office. But that doesn't help, right? That doesn't help. So I come to you, and I also like to come to you because I like to not sit behind my desk in my office. I like to go to different places because everything has a different atmosphere, feels different. And you bump into people in the hallway and you think, what the heck are they doing? It's interesting for me. So I come to you, and then now I'm going to get a little critical. I'll pick on you because I'm sitting opposite you. But if you just want to fill in a grant application, don't waste my time because it won't work. If you are just trying to say, I'm doing this marvelous work on inclusion, I'm not trying to say I know more about it than you, but as an example, I'm doing marvelous work on inclusion. I've got it all figured out. And at the end of the grant, I have to write a paragraph on impact. So can you just write that for me? Then I will tell you to jump in the lake. After you've jumped in the lake and you've dried off, then I say, now let's have a conversation. The thing that usually comes up in the conversation is, what is it actually you're trying to do? So we'll have this conversation now for real. You've dried off. You're not in the lake anymore. So, in your research, what is it you're trying to do?
Ooh, okay, now I really have to think about the concrete research which I would do. Okay, let's say that I'm researching the neoconservative opposition to human rights. More specifically, reproductive rights of women, which are now debated all over the world. You know, and it is value-driven. There are a lot of beliefs and values behind it in support of or against reproductive rights of women. My goal is to understand these different voices, but the goal is also, of course, to keep the reproductive rights intact as part of democratic organization of society.
Okay, so realizing I'm in front of all of you, slightly panicked because I have to look intelligent, and I don't know anything about this, I on purpose did not look at your research before I came here because that's...
Just made this up now.
Because I thought I don't want to make this too like I've practiced it all, right? Okay, so this is real. I just heard this for the first time. Okay, so this is the way I think now. I think, all right, for me, I get it. So the first thing I would talk about, of course, we have a longer time than just, 10 minutes. I would say, well, it sounds to me like that's not very valuable if you write an article in an esteemed journal and that gets put somewhere and maybe 10 people who are also experts in the field read it, right? That might not be so valuable to what you're trying to do. It might help your career a little bit, but it's not really that valuable because that won't really further the reproductive rights, right? So then I get into a conversation about, okay, who's your audience and how do you want to reach them?
Well, I'm actually not thinking about the audience at this stage. I'm thinking about who are my respondents. Who am I going to interview? Who am I going to research and get the information from? And very honestly, well, this is something that we didn't practice, so I'm not prepared in that sense. But in all honesty, probably my thoughts at the beginning are, journal, what impact, how many articles I still need to publish.
Sure,
these
fair.
are the questions that particularly younger researchers are very much under pressure.
So, although I would agree, and that comes into another issue, which is recognition and rewards, but let's park that for a minute. We can come back to it. How are you recognized and rewarded for what you do by society, but also by your boss? But let's leave that for a minute. But I would say yes, you are trying to write an article, but exactly from what you told me, I know you're passionate about it, and you didn't say to me at the beginning, oh, I want to write an article. No, you said, I want to have this discourse, and at the end of the day, I actually want to try and preserve reproductive rights in women, for women. Okay, but you said, I'm thinking about who are my respondents? Who can I ask these questions? How can I reach them? Okay, how do you reach them?
Well, definitely you contact them. On one hand, you have feminist organizations who are working towards that. On the other hand, you have those organizations who oppose it. They might not be willing to talk with me necessarily. That might be a methodologically challenging task to do. But these are the two groups that I would, if analyzing discourse, contact. Unless I do a desk research, which would be, a critical discourse analysis of parliamentary debate.
Right.
Right. I'm coming up with the ideas as we go. But now that you asked me about the audience, probably the audience on one hand are policymakers because they play a role in how the legislation is, adopted or protected or whatever, but also general population because this particular issue is so much splitting the society.
So just from what you've told me, I get very excited.
So how do I make the bridge between all these different opposing views, which are quite be very strong? Yes, I am against. No, I am in favor.
Right. So I don't know, but what I do know is if we're talking about impact, and if I'm thinking about your next grant or your subsidy or something maybe you have to present internally, what you've told me now makes me think, oh, you have a gold mine. Okay, so let me just, off the top of my head, say what I'm thinking. Right, so you have the policy aspect. So that's kind of the unsung hero of impact, right? Because they kind of have influence and you often don't see it. The general public doesn't see it. But actually, what you're telling me is you want to have some kind of outcome that you can then influence policy, which could then change the way that people are doing things in your country or nationally or internationally, which has a huge influence. You could also talk about you're going to reach out to policymakers. Maybe you're going to have some kind of workshop with them. Maybe you're going to have some kind of discussion where they can come and ask questions. Maybe what is really important about what you're doing is the process. So maybe it's not so much that at the end of the day you have, I'll just make it up, a new law about abortion, right? That's the outcome, that's the result. Maybe it's that you've forged, or you are forging, this really good network of policymakers and government officials who come to you and your team or your university when they're looking for evidence-based research on certain topics, or when you're talking about parliamentary debates. And maybe you've done this really great analysis of it, and maybe they realize, because you've created these bridges with them, you're really the person to go to when they want to understand this better, or they want to see how that policy in the past has influenced things, and what are the concerns now. So that's one part, the policy part. Another part would be your audience and also the people that you're trying to reach out to. So a couple of things will happen there, or could happen there. So when you're thinking about impact, I agree, you don't know. If you knew everything at the beginning, there's no point in doing it. But I could say the same for research. You don't know. So you write a proposal, you come up with an outline of what you want to do because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You have a hypothesis, which might change as you work, but you don't know. And the exact same is with impact. But it could be that when you're starting to ask some of your respondents, something changes. They trust you. Or they distrust you. Or they've decided that the role of the university is different than they think. Or you act as a bridge between many, many different groups. So there's a lot of different ways that could go.
I think one of the concerns that comes from researchers in social sciences, humanities, and arts is that the impact, the way we hear the word impact, is like, I do something and then something changes. But in society, the changes takes ages, takes 10 years. So, my little research might not be really important in the long run. Looking back, I could say, well, this is where we started, right? But I can't say, just because of this one tiny research that I've done, or some discourse analysis of some parliamentary debate that nobody was interested in, and eventually nobody quoted me, had some, immediate effect.
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
I'm guessing that we are all burdened by the heavy weight of the word impact.
Yeah, I totally agree, but let's make this example really real. So I was asked to come here today and to give a panel discussion like we're doing now and a workshop. And I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. Yeah, and I haven't ever been here before, and I always like talking to people, sure. But that wasn't that interesting for me. I like doing that. Don't misunderstand me. The interesting part was the part where I said to the people who asked me and who are organizing, well, listen, I'm always telling people about impact. One way that you make impact and that you can measure impact is doing an event like this, right? Unimind's event. However, let's think about that for a minute. Is it a one-day event or a week event and then it's gone? Or is this the start of something? So, not just me, but you and the other speakers and the other activities that you're going to have, does that trigger something with the other people here? And they go home and they start thinking about things, or they're encouraged to do something differently, or they think you're all crazy, and that little seed is something that might, exactly like you say, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, might have a much bigger impact. So let's try and organize this and think about it from that perspective. So not that it's one day, I checked off the box, yeah, we did that, but wait a minute, and let's also think about the process. So it's not that you get a speaker to come and say something and then that's done and we all go home. It's about, wait a minute, the group that Nina was talking about, that was getting together, when we have to think about the impact that we're creating as a group and we have to do that together, what happens? And how do we do that with each other? And how do we continue that? And in that process of thinking about that and organizing that, are we changing the way that we work? And will that down the road also have effect and hopefully benefit? And I would argue yes. And my compliments to the team here, because I told them all kinds of crazy things that they should do, and they did that, and it wasn't easy for them. But that's exactly what we're trying to do. You're trying to change something and work together to achieve an outcome that you might not see today or in a month or in a year, but it will probably bear fruit down the road.
Okay, now moving away from my own research, let's try to make it more general.
Yeah.
In 4 or 5 points, I don't know how many you need, next time I'm sitting and writing my application for whatever research we do, not the reproductive rights. How should my thinking process be organized? Where should I start? And how can I use the office at the university? The faculty? How can these be part of these 4 or 5 points which you will now present?
Great. So I'm going to say all kinds of things, and then the office is going to hate me because I'll say they're going to do all kinds of things and they won't be able to. No. Okay, a couple of things. First, I want to get away from the fact that you're doing impact to fill in a subsidy. Maybe, and valuable and important. However, there's a really, really, really important part of my job, which is the subsidy has ended. You've done this marvelous research. The grant has run out. It was 2 years, 4 years. It's done. And now what? Will that research just die? And that's the part...
Yes, because I have to apply for a new one, get money to have my
So
work.
before that research dies, or when you're starting to apply for a new grant, either time, the first thing I want you to do is to knock on the door of the Knowledge Transfer Office and say, hello, I'm Jessica, I have this fantastic idea. Or, hello, I have an idea, I'm not really sure it's going to work. Or, oh my gosh, in a year, not tomorrow, in a year, my grant runs out, but I'm right in the middle of something, and I've got some really good outcomes, and I don't want that to die. So then my job in a knowledge transfer office is to think about, well, what can we do? What can we do either to help you think about your next grant, or to make sure that what you have doesn't just die, because that's no good to anybody, and that is very demotivating as a researcher, and it's not helping society. And so what do I mean by that? What I mean is, let's think of a way to make your thing, whatever it is, your new method, your way of analyzing, your network that you've built up, your tool that you've made, whatever it is. How do we make that sustainable? And I don't mean green sustainable. I mean that it lives for a longer time. And then the conversation becomes very interesting. To go back to your 4 or 5 points, what I always start with is, okay, what do you have? Right? So I have something. I have an outcome or a tool or a methodology or a network or a desire to do something. What do you want? I need to know what you want. Do you want to start a company? Do you want to just make this tool useful in the future? There's lots of different things you can want. And when I know those things and we talk about it together, then we can think about, okay, what can we do? And the what can we do is from applying to new grants, getting new partners. When I say partners, I mean academic and non-academic. Maybe turning your idea into a consultancy, maybe providing a service for others, maybe looking for people that could just pay enough to cover the cost. So you don't necessarily have to make a profit, but you can't just do it at a loss all the time. That won't work. And there's a lot of different possibilities and different avenues to explore. You had a question about, I think, what's impact and what's applicability. I think that was the question. So impact is huge, which sometimes is not helpful. Because it's so huge, people get lost. So, and even for me, if I say, well, to me, impact is making positive change, that can be like, well, what does that mean? So I try and narrow it down to the research and the researcher at that time. So don't make it positive change over the next 50 years in the world. I mean, that's not very helpful. But, make it, okay, what do you want to achieve in the 6 months or a year or 2 years in your local area or your field? And that helps people make it more concrete.
You did prepare some good examples. As we have a few more minutes, let's present 2.
Sure. I don't even know which ones we have.
I don't also know if this is moving. Aha, it's good if the thing is on. Okay, cats and dogs, we can explain that at the end.
Oh, we can do that at the end. Which we can choose. Which one you can choose? Which one would you like?
Let's start with number 1 and number 2.
Okay, sure. We'll do that one. I have to stand over here because I can't remember everything I said. Oh, you have to go back. Go back one slide. This one. Okay. Right. So these are real things from my work. You can see this one. This one's nice because it's a real game, like a card game that they made, right? And it's all about inclusion and thinking about diversity. And this was from a researcher who was actually a linguist, but she did this on the side because she realized when she was thinking about her study in linguists, I don't think that's the correct English. Anyway, she thought, no, but actually this other thing has come up, and so I'm going to make a game about it. And we don't have a lot of time. Normally I would ask you and we would, go through all the different things, but let's just go to the next slide so that you can see a little bit what happens. So I'm going to stand over here because I like to walk. Okay. There's a lot of words up here. I'm not going to describe them all, but the point is, so she has this card game. She came to me and I said, I have a card game, and what do I do now? And so there's a lot of things you can do. One thing is most knowledge transfer offices have something called a knowledge disclosure form. If they're a traditional tech transfer office, it's called an invention disclosure form. And it's a way of the organization capturing what it is that you have. It's a formality. But it's also a way down the road, if money comes in, to know who was the person who thought this up, who's the creator. So I walk them through what that is and what it means and has anyone else in the world done it, all that kind of stuff. She can publish it, and that's actually not a short conversation either, because it could be open. You can publish it openly or closed, or where do you want to publish it? Who's your audience? Do you want to publish it for educators? Do you want to publish it internally in your faculty? There's all different kinds of people she wanted to collaborate with. She realized that they were using this in the faculty where she was working for new hires to the university. But I said, well, wait a minute. Why are we doing that? I mean, couldn't we do this so much wider than that? And she started talking to people, and all of these other people, including in public school, primary school, education, said, well, we want this game. It would be great for our 8-year-olds. Then if you start talking to everyone about this idea and you still want to have it as yours, you have to think about confidentiality. What else do I have up here? Oh, if you tweak the game and you make it not for 8-year-olds, but you make it for onboarding in companies, you know, like big companies that have a lot of money, but you're trying to make them more conscious of inclusion and diversity, then that could be a contract research that you're doing, right? Same thing with sponsored research. You can have a partnership where somebody says, hey, together, let's develop this, and I will sponsor you for that. The grant application we went over a little bit, so there's a whole impact statement. There's a certain kind of grant, I'm sure it exists in different parts of the world, not just in the Netherlands, where you're encouraged to try and see, can I make a business plan out of this? Now let's just back up for a minute. When I say business plan, I don't mean earn millions of dollars. I mean just take something and spin it out of the university. Create your own separate little business that isn't in the university. And that could be nonprofit. So this is something that you can't patent. So since you can't patent it, how do you protect it? One way you can protect it is a trademark or a design. I can protect those. And there's lots of reasons why you might or might not want to do that. Another thing you could do is you could license it out to somebody else. We have certain funding, which when you get a public-private partnership, it will be matched by the government. So suddenly your 20,000 euros turns into 40. So that can be very interesting. And last but not least, social enterprise. I could spend hours on social enterprise. That's my baby. But social enterprise is when you have a venture, which could take many different legal forms, but the primary mission is a social one. It's not profit. Should we go to the next one?
We can.
Okay, this is one of my favorite researchers. That's actually a picture of her. She's wonderful. She's a neuropsychologist. She got into thinking about people who actually had injuries, brain injuries, and they lost the ability to navigate. So they got lost. And then her research moved into other areas, which was about dementia and people getting lost. And so she's developed a training to help when you have dementia. If it's progressive, you're just going to get worse. But if you have some kind of brain injury, how can I improve that? And it's a game. But she's done clinical testing. It actually works. So it's a clinical intervention. Then she started working on all different cool kind of different ways with media and virtual reality and augmented reality to help improve your navigation. And it became so popular that regular kids wanted to do it for fun, who have no trouble navigating at all. And that was kind of unexpected. And she also, so she's a researcher. She doesn't know how to make games and make applications. And so she partnered with a private company that does that. So then my role was, before we got all of there, it was, okay, how do we find a private company to do that? And should we make maybe a couple of versions? One for general public, and you can charge for that, just for fun. And one for the clinical setting. And then people can actually use that. And there maybe you can also do clever things. That money that you're getting from the one bit for fun, you could channel into your research or into your development for the other bit that you're trying to do for societal good. Let's look at the next slide, because I think I probably wrote down all kinds of words about that. Yeah. One of the things I put up here at the beginning is freedom to operate. Freedom to operate means you have something, some idea or some technology or something, and you have to look and make sure you're not stepping on the toes of somebody else, that maybe somebody else has developed it. And in her case, there were actually patents about this, having to do with the computer algorithms and the way that she had built things to help you figure out how to navigate. But that's okay. You just go to somebody who can help you figure that out and look at the path. And she was actually kind of excited about that, because she thought she was doing this by herself, but if somebody else has a patent on it, she was first upset. She said, oh my gosh, there's a patent out there, it's going to block me. No, I said, that's fantastic. we're going to look up, patents are public. They're public, right? Which means they give you the recipe, they have to, and you look and see who actually filed the patent. And then I phone them up and I say, hey, you filed this patent. We're doing similar stuff. Let's do something together. This could be really, really interesting. You're a company. I'm a university. Let's do something together. So there's lots of possibility there, and it's a good thing, actually. Open source is another one. I could go on that for hours. It's not the Shangri-La. Why do I say that? I believe in open, right? Open science, open source, open access. However, and I say this a lot to researchers, just because you put it out, quote, for free, like you put your results somewhere on a website, it doesn't mean you've done a damn thing. When I'm nasty, I say worse words. Because how do people find it? How do they access it? How do they even know? You know how much stuff is out there? How do you drive traffic to what you're trying to show them or tell them? How do you improve it? How, if somebody, if you publish something or you have a tool and somebody accesses it openly, but they tweak it, but you spent 10 years developing it and you know that it should go like this for certain reasons, and they wreck it. Is that what we're trying to do here? How do you, if you put it open, how do you make sure that it can live? Who pays for all of the server costs? So I challenge them, think about it in a way to try and actually achieve the end result, which is to make it accessible, to make it usable, to make people actually benefit from it. Don't just throw it out somewhere and say, check, I did open, give me a gold star. I don't have any patience for that. Let's sit down together and think about what you're trying to do and how then we can do that.
Jessica, I think we have to
end. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to wrap up. But there will be time for questions.
Should we just do one thing, which is the first slide?
Yeah, I will not let you go without that one because we need to explain the first question in the questionnaire today. And that was about dogs and cats, and there was a comment in the audience that I'm neither. I'm a human being, not a cat or a dog, and I fully understand this comment. But we have this here because when I was preparing for this debate, I found online an interview with you where you claimed, well, you worked with animals, right? And you learned a lot from them, especially pigs, if I'm not mistaken, you said once. But you did also say once that STEM is a dog and social sciences are cats. And that maybe sometimes social sciences will be dogs as well. As a person who has a cat and a dog, I didn't know what to make out of that. So just in one sentence, why are we cats and not dogs?
Well, just to explain the slide, so SHAPE is social sciences, humanities, and arts for people in the economy. That was first coined in the UK and is kind of spreading over Europe. And STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, you can be whatever you want. And if you identify as being a dog, great, or a cat, great, or a person, that's also good. My point here is, when I practiced as a veterinary, veterinary medicine for 12 years, and cats are not small dogs, right? That's my point. So that I see a real distinction between cats and dogs. Of course, they're both animals. Humans are also animals. I see a distinction in the way that you can approach and develop SHAPE versus STEM research. But I would strongly encourage cats not to try and be dogs. Does that help?
But if I am a dog person and a social scientist?
Me too. Look at me. What am I talking about mostly in my life now? Social science, humanities, and arts. What's my background? Biology, history, veterinary medicine, community health and epidemiology. So I'm kind of all mixed up. However, I don't ever think that cats are small dogs. And it's okay that you can have a cohabitation of cats and dogs in the same place. It can be wonderful. It can also be a disaster.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Jessica, thank you very much. I hope we did plant a small seed today, and in 10 years or earlier, there will be a big tree. Thank you so much.
V Pisarni za prenos znanja smo letos prvič pripravili pilotni razpis sklada Univerze v Ljubljani. Na razpis so se lahko prijavili zaposleni Univerze v Ljubljani z področja humanističnih in družboslovnih ved ter umetnosti. Spodbujali smo interdisciplinarno povezovanje raziskovalcev z raziskovalnimi skupinami tehničnih in naravoslovnih smeri. Cilj prijave ni bilo nadaljne raziskovanje, temveč povečevanje družbenega učinka osnovne raziskave. Projekt je moral dokazati, da naslavlja pereče družbene izzive, vključuje različne družbene skupine, krepi moči, povečuje aktivacijo in participacijo državljanov ali ima potencial zmanjšati družbene neenakosti. Na razpis smo prejeli 14 prijav iz različnih fakultet. V sofinanciranje smo izbrali 8 projektov. Danes se predstavlja 7 projektov. Fakulteta za upravo. Povečanje praktične uporabe inovativnega analitičnega e-orodja za spremljanje pametnega javnega upravljanja v javni organizaciji. Projekt bo predstavil dr. Matej Babšek.
Hvala lepa, lep pozdrav vsem skupaj, še od mene dobrodošli na Fakulteti za upravo še enkrat. Tekom predstavitve bo kolega Dejan Ravšelj vam razdelil nekaj promocijskih letakov, v okviru katerih je bilo razvito to e-orodje, kar je tudi ena od naših aktivnosti v projektu. Kar se pa tiče samega projekta, kot omenjeno, nanaša se na promocijo oziroma povečanje res te praktične uporabnosti v okviru promocije znanosti, tega analitičnega e-orodja za spremljanje pametnega javnega upravljanja. Zdaj mogoče je to en tak teoretski koncept, en tak buzzword v znanosti, ampak ima tudi čist praktično uporabnost, kar bomo videli. Pa mogoče zelo na kratko o samem e-orodju. Gre v bistvu za klasični spletni vprašalnik, namenjen vodjem v javni upravi, javnem sektorju, recimo direktorjem občinskih uprav. Sam vprašalnik najprej zajema temeljne demografske podatke in potem pač vprašanja oziroma neke trditve, ki na Likartovi lestvici strinjanja potem udeleženci izpolnjujejo. Ta vprašanja pa zajemajo pač pokrivajo ta teoretski koncept pametnega javnega upravljanja, tehnologija, struktura, organizacijska kultura, storitve, zaupanje v organizaciji in podobno. Se pravi, to je ta prvi del e-orodja. Drugi del, kar je nekako pač ta bistvena dodana vrednost, je pa poročilo, ki ga pripravi sistem na podlagi rešenih odgovorov. Temelji na tej logiki semaforja, se pravi zelena za močna področja, rumena za neka povprečna, rdeča pa za kritična. In kar je tudi pomembno, potem ta udeleženec vidi, kako se pač nekako rangirajo njegovi odgovori glede na ostale udeležence. Recimo, če so tole izpolnjevali, seveda anonimizirano v primerjavi z ostalimi, če so tole izpolnjevali direktorji občinskih uprav, potem vsak nekako vidi, kje je razvrščen on oziroma njegovi odgovori v primerjavi z ostalimi. Kar se tiče same promocije v okviru projekta, ena stvar, ki smo že izvedli, je priprava teh letakov. Potem orodje smo predstavljali na različnih konferencah, od mednarodnih, recimo EGBA, do nacionalnih dnevi slovenske uprave Ljubljana forum, pa tudi mednarodnih, recimo AI Weekend, kjer smo različnim deležnikov, ker ravno v tem pač vidimo nek pomemben prispevek povezovanja različnih akterjev in javne uprave, odločevalcev, politikov, gospodarstva, tudi nekih talentov na tem področju predstavili to orodje in pa zasnovali smo tudi nadgradnje orodja, predvsem to, da ga na podlagi povratnih informacij uporabnikov nadgradimo in pa odpremo za splošno uporabo, ker trenutno ni javno dostopno še, ga pa bomo odprli in v slovenskem in v angleškem jeziku. Se pravi, to je eden od načrtov nadaljnega dela, pa nadaljna promocija na družbenih omrežjih in se pravi nadgradnja na podlagi povratnih informacij uporabnikov. Kar je ključno spoznanje dosedanje promocije je to, da orodje je potencialnim uporabnikom zanimivo, predvsem z vidika praktične uporabnosti in pa seveda tega, kakšne konkretne koristi od njega lahko imajo, vse skupaj z ciljem, se pravi, čeprav se to pač pogosto govori, no, ampak naš cilj je omogočiti izboljšanje upravljanja z tega res uporabniškega vidika državljanov, gospodarstva, nevladnih organizacij, da pač vsi deležniki skupaj tvorijo neke pametne, dostopne in učinkovite rešitve za družbo. Hvala lepa za vašo pozornost.
Fakulteta za družbene vede, krepitev kibernetske odpornosti zaposlenih na Univerzi v Ljubljani. Projekt bo predstavila dr. Špela Orehek.
Pozdravljeni. Osnovna raziskava tega HUD projekta izhaja iz zaključkov moje doktorske dizertacije, ki so zbrani v raziskovalnem poročilu o družboslovnih vidikih informacijske varnosti. To se nanaša predvsem na človeški faktor informacijske varnosti, kot so denimo znanje, vedenje, stališča, norme zaposlenih, če omenim samo najbolj očitne. Raziskava je bila izvedena na zaposlenih Univerze v Ljubljani, kjer je bilo ugotovljeno, da imajo zaposleni v povprečju pomanjkljivo znanje o informacijski varnosti. Seveda se stopnja znanja razlikuje po posameznih članicah. In pa morda še bolj problematična ugotovitev je, da zaposleni pri poročanju svojih vedenjskih navad glede zagotavljanja organizacijske informacijske varnosti niso bili iskreni. Zato so bila podana priporočila za izvajanje izobraževanj in usposabljanj za dvig znanja o informacijski varnosti zaposlenih ter krepitev odgovornosti in medsebojnega zaupanja med vodstvom in zaposlenimi. Dejstvo je, da človeški faktor še vedno predstavlja prevladujoč vektor kibernetskih napadov po vsem svetu. Zato je namen tega projekta dvig oziroma krepitev zavedanja zaposlenih o pomenu informacijske varnosti s ciljem povečanja znanja o tem. Problem, ki se pri tem pojavlja, je predvsem, kako dostopati do zaposlenih in jih nagovarjati, da bi ustrezno prepoznali in razumeli pomen oziroma svoj del odgovornosti za informacijsko varnost celotne organizacije. In pri tem imamo v planu posneti kratke videoposnetke, torej do 10 minut z neko atraktivno osebino, ki bi privabili zaposlene k ogledu. V prvem videu se bo predstavila informacijsko-varnostna politika Univerze v Ljubljani, za katero 3/4 zaposlenih sploh ne ve, da obstaja. Drug video bo pa narejen na način case studies, torej na realnih primerih informacijsko-varnostnih incidentov, ki so se v preteklosti zgodile katerim podjetjem v Sloveniji ali pa po svetu, in s tem na ta način bi želeli zaposlene spodbuditi k razmisleku o pomenu informacijske varnosti tako za njih kot za celotno organizacijo, v kateri so zaposleni. Hvala.
Hvala. Fakulteta za šport. Implementacija merljivih kriterijev za financiranje socialnega vključevanja v športu. Projekt bo predstavila dr. Viktorija Pečnikar Oblak.
Najlepša hvala. Mi smo se lotili enega Erasmus projekta z Madžarsko in Portugalsko, kjer smo ugotavljali, na kakšen način bi lahko še sofinancirali bolj vključujoče, inkluzivne dejavnosti v športu. V okviru sklada smo potem nekako rekli, da bi naše ugotovitve radi razširjali in smo zato prijavili ta projekt uvedba merljivih kriterijev za sofinanciranje socialnega vključevanja v športu. Napačen gumb sem stisnila.
Aha, to smo na začetku, lahko daš.
Kjer? Medtem, ko čakamo, lahko povem naprej, da nekako smo ugotovili, da je potrebno iti stran od množičnosti in od uspešnosti, ker sta ponavadi kriterija za sofinanciranje športnih dejavnosti, se pravi, koliko ljudi vadi neko športno dejavnost ali pa kako uspešni so, predvsem govorimo o tekmovanjih. Kadar govorimo za ranljive osebe, za ranljive ljudi, takrat ne moramo govoriti o množičnosti, gre za nek individualni pristop. Cilj je, oziroma zanimalo nas je, vključevanje v večinske športne organizacije, ne v neke specializirane, tako imenovane invalidske, ampak v športne klube in društva, ki so v lokalnem okolju dosegljivi. Kako bi lahko ljudi, ranljive ali pa ovirane, za oviranostjo vključili v ta okolja. Odkrili ali pa našli smo skupaj z športniki z oviranostjo 6 različnih področji: trajnost, izvedba, mreženje, odnos, znanje in dobro upravljanje, na katerih bi se lahko preverjala, se pravi, v nasprotju z množičnostjo pa uspešnostjo neka aktivnost, s katero lahko pokaže športni klub, da vključuje ranljive ljudi. V okviru projekta smo si zastavili, da bomo naredili spletno stran, kjer bodo vse informacije o možnosti vključevanja ranljivih ljudi v večinska športna okolja dosegljiva, vse informacije, ki bodo na eni strani tako dobrodošle za športnike kot njihove starše, na drugi strani pa za odločevalce, za tiste, ki financirajo športne programe in pa seveda za društva, ki so ponavadi prejemniki teh financ ali pa sofinanciranja. Se pravi, glavni cilj našega projekta je razširjanje teh novih meril za sofinanciranje. Izvedeli smo že nekaj srečanj, sestankov z odločevalci. Prvič sta se za isto misel usedli 2 fundaciji, Fundacija za šport in Fundacija za invalidske in humanitarne organizacije, ki vsaka na svoj način financira ta šport, ampak niti ena za druga ne veste, tako da zelo razpršeno imamo financiranje v Sloveniji teh športnih programov, še posebej za ranljive ljudi. In tako kot sem rekla, na eni strani usposabljamo športne organizacije, bomo za njih naredili en seminar, na drugi strani pa nekako razširjamo te možnosti tudi v manjših občinah in oddelke za šport informiramo o teh možnostih. Hvala lepa.
Najlepša hvala. Akademija za likovno umetnost in oblikovanje. Trajnostna produkcija zaključne razstave Univerze v Ljubljani. Projekt bo predstavila Pia
Pozdravljeni še z moje strani, sem Pia Grolegar in predstavila vam bom raziskavo, ki je bila narejena na Akademiji za likovno umetnost. Če koga zanima, lahko skenira QR kodo in si jo podrobneje pogleda, če ne pa. Skratka, gre za priročnik, ki smo ga zasnovali po analizi ogljičnega odtisa razstave na Akademiji za likovno umetnost. Na Akademiji se v enem študentskem letu v bistvu zgodijo 2 razstavi in ta zaključna v maju ima več kot 500 obiskovalcev in je v bistvu kar velik pregled vseh študijskih del. In glede na trende na tem področju smo se odločili, da bomo tudi mi izvedli analizo vseh v bistvu materialov razstavnega pohištva in vseh stvari, ki vplivajo, kar se tiče materialnega vidika, na ogljični odtis razstave. Raziskavo smo se lotili tako, da smo v bistvu v 2 razstavah popisali vse tiskovine, potem materiale za makete in druge izdelke, opremo za predstavitev del in razstavno opremo, ter na podlagi popisa izvedli v bistvu izračun ogljičnega odtisa. Na podlagi v bistvu podatkov smo potem s pomočjo primerov dobrih praks iz tujine in Slovenije spisali priporočila in v bistvu objavili tale priročnik. Samo za zanimivost, na desni strani je prikaz recimo ogljičnega odtisa spletne strani, ki je bila objavljena ob razstavi maja 2023, kjer se lahko vidi, kako pač v bistvu imajo različne smeri drugačen ogljični odtis same spletne strani. Torej, največji ogljični odtis je imelo smer fotografija in grafično oblikovanje. Pomemben del so bile smernice, ki so bile namenjene temu, da v bistvu hkrati ozaveščajo o problematikah in dajo tudi neko smer, kam se lahko akademija razvija naprej. Torej, kaj moramo odpraviti, zmanjšati, zamenjati oziroma nadomestiti. Samo za zanimivost, eden izmed največjih problemov in največjega ogljičnega odtisa je prispevala prav kapa plošča, ki se uporablja za v bistvu razstavne plakate in je po parih dnevih zavržena. Poleg v bistvu samih smernic pa smo v bistvu odtis vsakega materiala pripravili v obliki potnega lista materiala, kjer je bil pač opisan način uporabe na akademiji, katere smeri ga uporabljajo, koliko je bilo tega materiala na 2 razstavah in pa tudi sam ogljični odtis. V tem primeru je bil tudi odtis porabe vode. Kot pa se velikokrat zgodi, nismo imeli časa, da bi v bistvu povzetke raziskave širili naprej med zaposlene in študente na akademiji, niti na socialnih odmrežjih, zato smo se prijavili na hud razpis, v sklopu katerega si želimo poglobiti primere dobre prakse iz tujine, ki so nastali v zadnjem letu, izvesti delavnico ne samo za zaposlene in študente na akademiji, temveč tudi za druge fakultete, ki se srečujejo s podobnim razstavljanjem in hkrati izvesti PR kampanjo. Hvala.
Najlepša hvala. Zdravstvena fakulteta z usmerjeno vadbo joge do bolj vzdržljivih mišic trupa. Projekt bo predstavila dr. Maja Petrič.
Pozdravljeni, moje ime je Maja Petrič in bom torej predstavila projekt zdravstvene fakultete, hud projekt. Z našim projektom v bistvu želimo predstaviti rezultate oziroma ugotovitve raziskave, ki sem jo izvedla v okviru svojega doktorskega dela. Naslov oziroma tema moje raziskave je bila v bistvu raziskovanje učinkovitosti redne vadbe joge, ki so ji bili dodani principi stabilizacijske vadbe na vzdržljivost in pa raztegljivost mišic trupa pri zdravih odraslih osebah. In zakaj sem se sploh ukvarjala z vzdržljivostjo mišic trupa? Zato, ker v bistvu dobro vzdržljive oziroma primerno vzdržljive mišice trupa so v bistvu neka osnova, neka podlaga za zdravo hrbtenico, medenico, torej za dobro podporo in zaščito tega sistema. Seveda, če so mišice dobro vzdržljive, se počasneje, kasneje utrudijo in seveda s tem tudi že ko sedimo, v bistvu lažje in bolj spontano vzdržujemo nek nevtralen, tak zdrav položaj naše hrbtenice. Rdeča nit cele raziskave oziroma tega, kar govorim, je pravzaprav torej preventiva bolečine v spodnjem delu hrbta, ker v bistvu slabo vzdržljive mišice trupa so seveda večji dejavnik tveganja za pojav te težave. Čist ključni rezultati te raziskave, ne bom šla v detajle, ker ni časa za to, ampak v osnovi po 3 mesecih redne vadbe so se vse 4 glavne mišične skupine izboljšale, kar se tiče vzdržljivosti, torej tako hrbtne, trebušne kot tudi stranske mišice trupa, leve in desne strani, so se izboljšale njihova vzdržljivost, torej daljši je bil čas zadrževanja položajev, ki jih vidite tukaj na fotografijah, in tudi med mišicami je bilo razmerje vzdržljivosti boljše. Kar se tiče našega HUD projekta, tiste ključne aktivnosti HUD projekta so zdaj zapisane na tej prosojnici. Predavanje, s katerim v bistvu, katerega namen je predstavitev rezultatov in tudi podati nekaj praktičnih usmeritev na podlagi te raziskave. Eno tako predavanje je že bilo izvedeno v septembru na zdravstveni fakulteti, prišlo je poslušati 70 udeležencev in zdaj se že pogovarjamo za naslednjo izvedbo predavanja v novembru. Potem potekajo tudi že testiranja vzdržljivosti mišic trupa s kratko interpretacijo rezultatov tistega, ki pride na testiranje. Nekaj praktičnih preizkusov vadbe sem tudi že izpeljala, tako da lahko udeleženci tudi izkusijo, kako to izgleda. V nadaljevanju projekta so pa v pripravi oziroma v načrtu tudi letaki, kjer bo nekako na kratko povzetih tistih nekaj ključnih ugotovitev, pa morda kakšna praktična usmeritev za naprej. Hvala.
Najlepša hvala. Akademija za gledališče, radio, film in televizijo. Aplikativna umetnost, uporaba tehnik kreativnega pisanja v širšem družbenem kontekstu. Projekt bo predstavila Helena Šukljan.
Pozdravljeni, moje ime je Helena Šukljan in sem trenutno študentka interdisciplinarnega doktorskega študijskega programa umetnost na GRFT, kjer se med drugim ukvarjam tudi s tem, kako ekspresivno in kreativno pisanje vpliva na dobrobit posameznika. V bistvu raziskujemo to, kako umetnost, v mojem primeru pisanje, deluje oziroma kako jo lahko uporabimo v nekem širšem družbenem kontekstu in kako lahko povezujemo umetnost in znanost. No, na akademiji raziskujemo metodologijo pisanja, ki pa ni nujno povezana samo s kreativo, ampak gre za pisanje, ki predstavlja dialog s samim sabo, preko katerega vzpostavljamo dialog s samim sabo in pa je namenjeno samo pomoči. Baziramo na metodi ekspresivnega pisanja, zelo na kratko gre za metodo 4-dnevnega pisanja, kjer 15 do 20 minut neprekinjeno in prosto pišemo o nečem, kar se nas osebno dotika, nas nagovarja, nas vznemirja. Gre lahko za neke življenjske travme, lahko pa tudi za čisto vsakdanje dileme, kaj bomo jedli za kosilo. Tako da važno je, da nagovarjamo sebe, svoje najgloblje občutke, dvome, strahove, misli, zaradi tega, ker tako pridemo do artikulacije nekih zmedenih misli in nedefiniranih stanj in konkretiziramo te naše stvari. Še ena zelo pomembna stvar tega pisanja pa je to, da je to pisanje, ki je namenjeno samo za nas in ga lahko po vsakem dnevu zbrišemo, zradiramo in tega ne bo nihče bral, kar nam daje tudi neko svobodo, da smo v pisavi res iskreni in po vsakem pisanju naredimo tudi samo refleksijo, kjer sami sebe ocenimo, kako se počutimo, kaj smo pisali. Lani smo izvedli 2 projekta uporabe vaj ekspresivnega in kreativnega pisanja kot sredstva za samopomoč pri soočanju z izgubo in žalovanjem, kjer smo sicer izgubo razumeli širše, ne samo izgubo osebe, ampak tudi izgubo predmeta recimo, in prišli smo do zelo zanimivih zaključkov, predvsem to, da so osebe, ki so šle skozi ta 2 programa na izgubo gledali z drugačno perspektivo in so morda bile na koncu malo bolj pomirjene s to življenjsko izkušnjo. Hkrati smo pa v tem programu ne se osredotočili več samo na to ekspresivno pisanje, ampak smo mu dodali tudi elemente kreativnosti, kot je recimo pisanje dialogov, pisanje poezije, pisanje skozi vizuro predmeta in podobno. No, v vsebini HUD sklada pa smo potem prepoznali neko dobro priložnost za aplikacijo teh znanj še na druge skupine ljudi in odločili smo se, da bomo projekt pisanja izvedli z obsojenkami v Zavodu za prestajanje kazni zapora IK. Izvedli smo 6-dnevni projekt oziroma delavnico pisanja, ki je vsakič bila sestavljena iz najprej uvodne motivacije, kjer smo povedali, kaj bomo pisali na nek igriv način, potem so obsojenke 20 minut pisali, na koncu je sledil še pogovor oziroma kratka refleksija. Trenutno smo zdaj v fazi analize te delavnice, ampak že do zdaj smo videli, da je v bistvu pisanje na njih vplivalo zelo zanimivo, prišle so do nekih ugotovitev, do katerih sicer ne bi prišle, recimo tudi če sem v zaporu, sem svobodna, ali pa končno vem, da se moram postaviti na prvo mesto, ali pa to, da sem v zaporu, ni moj največji zapor in podobno. Ampak ja, kot omenjeno, podrobna analiza tega še sledi. Kaj naprej? Želimo si program pisanja še razširiti in ga aplicirati na druge skupine ljudi, predvsem pa želimo tudi pripraviti nek program pisanja, ki bo namenjen vsakemu posamezniku. Zakaj? Zato, ker živimo v takem hitrem in begajočem svetu, kjer si ponavadi ne vzamemo niti 15 minut na dan zase in če si skozi pisanje pač vzamemo teh 15 minut, pridemo v stik s samim sabo, vzpostavimo dialog s samim sabo in smo na koncu boljši posamezniki. Hvala.
Najlepša hvala. Še zadnja predstavitev. Naravoslovno-tehniška fakulteta, trajnostna koto. Predstavitev družbeno angažiranih projektov z področja trajnostne mode in tekstilnega ustvarjanja. Projekt bo predstavila Nastja Grmek-Sagadin.
Torej, lepo pozdravljeni. Moje ime je Nastja Sagadin Grmek in danes predstavljam projekt Trajnostna koto in sem z Naravoslovno-tehniške fakultete. Temelji glavnih predmetov na programu študija oblikovanje tekstil in oblačil so trajnostni principi oblikovanja. Zavedamo pa se, da je naša naloga ne samo razvijanje takšnih projektov, ampak tudi ozveščanje javnosti o le-teh. V okviru projekta Trajnostna koto izvajamo različne aktivnosti z namenom vključevanja in ozaveščanje širše javnosti o pomenu trajnosti v modi in na področju tekstilnega ustvarjanja. Tukaj vidite našo prvo aktivnost, prenesi, odnesi. Šlo je za projekt oziroma aktivnost v tednu Fashion Revolution Weeka. Šlo je za izmenjevalnico oblačil, rabljenih, nošenih oblačil, ki so tako našla nove lastnike. Gre za projekt, ki je ozveščal o nekih negativnih vplivih hitre mode, ki se trenutno dogaja. Izvedli smo tudi aktivnost, v bistvu modno revijo projekta NTF s Krimom. Šlo je za trajnostni projekt, v okviru katerega je na katedri nastala preta proti kolekcija upcikliranih in recikliranih športnih dresov, igralk rokometnega kluba Krim. Do sedaj smo izvedli tudi neko medgeneracijsko delavnico Tekstilna vez in predstavitev skupnostne vezenine. Šlo je za iniciativo socialne aktivacije žensk iz različnih kulturnih okolij, ki temelji na uporabi tekstilnih ročnih del in vrednotenju tekstilne kulturne dediščine. Ena od aktivnosti do sedaj je bila tudi predstavitev razstave Svobodni ljudje. Gre za projekt umetniško-umestitvene klekljarske čipke v rudarsko kulturno dediščino. In pa do zdaj smo izvedli tudi eno javno predstavitev enega od projektov lanskega šolskega leta. Gre za projekt Niti in kode, kjer se ukvarjamo z tematiko umetne inteligence na področju tekstilstva, modnega oblikovanja in kako lahko nove tehnologije pomagajo bolj k trajnostnim pristopom samega oblikovanja. To je vse z moje strani. Dam besedo nazaj. Hvala.
Najlepša hvala predstavnikom HUD projektov.